Casey, there is a ton of advice online about podcasting, right?
Oh, yeah. There's some would say too much.
Definitely too much. And there's advice that everybody should absolutely listen to. And then there's advice that honestly you don't need to focus on in the beginning, but is helpful in the long term. And then there's just bad advice that sends you down the wrong path. I think that you and I should look at all this advice and put it on a tier list.
We're doing a tiers episode?
We're doing a tier list episode. Are you excited?
Oh, let's go.
So today on Podcast Support, we're going to look at all the most common advice online about podcasting and decide where it belongs on a tier list so that you know where to focus on while developing your own podcast. You ready, Casey?
Yeah, this sounds like an S tier time.
Sounds like an S tier time. Welcome to Podcast Support, the show where we tackle the questions every podcaster needs answered to grow a successful show. Whether you're just starting out or scaling an existing audience, we break down the roadblocks, share practical strategies, and give you step-by-step answers so you can spend less time guessing and more time building the podcast that you want.
Thank you for contacting Podcast Support.
All right, Casey. So obviously we've got our tier list here. D is the lowest quality advice. S is the top tier advice. The stuff that if you're not doing it, you are missing out. So let's start off with number 1 for us, which is, it doesn't get bigger when I click it. That's interesting. Which is to be clear about your show's niche. Where does being clear about your show's niche land on the tier chart?
I would definitely say being clear about your show's niche is, probably S tier.
Yeah, I do think it is S tier. Although I heard an interesting perspective on this recently that's kind of changed how I think about it, where it's not so much thinking about a niche, because niches are very broad, like a niche is fitness. And that's a very broad thing to put your podcast around. But instead, choosing a niche that's like a transformation within fitness. So specifically weight loss or specifically gaining muscle. Like suddenly now your podcast is so much more focused and people know exactly why they should listen to you.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'd say a niche isn't fitness, though. A niche is more specific and more narrowed down than going with something that's just like an industry or a category, which I would say fitness is.
That's a really good point. Fitness is definitely a purposefully broad niche because you can niche down further than that.
Yeah,
you're just gonna get as specific as you really want them to. But I do like thinking about it in terms of transformation. Like, what's your
transformation
audience?
is
How's your
good.
audience gonna change?
I just don't know that I would negate niches to get to boosting up transformations.
That's definitely a good point. We do. Not
I think
need
it's
to
also
just,
isn't a transformation just a value proposition?
a transformation a transformation is absolutely just a value proposition.
So I don't know, man. I think that I'd say that this is something that's known that might be a new fun way of suggesting it.
Yeah, they found a new way to put words together to mean the same thing we've all been saying the whole time.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. The next one we're going to do is be consistent with your posting schedule.
Sure. I'm going to say A tier.
A tier it is.
What do you think?
I was thinking A or B. But if you think
why?
A, because I was split between the two. So if you think A, I'll go with A.
Okay.
Why do you feel it's A and not B?
Because your audience wants to know when to expect things, especially if you're a business who's out there trying to grow your network or things like that. The way that you can do that is by making sure that you're always top of people's mind. And one of the easiest ways is by establishing a certain cadence or rhythm in which it trains them to know, oh, okay, I know that this podcast or this piece of content is going to be coming out at this time, so I'm keyed in to look for it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And algorithms also absolutely love that regular releasing of content, and for them, the algorithm to know that you are a source they can always push.
Yeah,
so definitely good to reward the algorithm in that way. And also just keeps your social media alive, makes sure that you always have clips to post and things like that. So definitely having a consistent schedule is a good thing.
Yeah.
Next one up is building an email list.
Well, what do you think?
I think it's S tier.
Building an email list is S tier?
Yeah, because I think in the long run, it's S tier. It's like one of those things that's it's not going to do anything for you when you're first starting your podcast. But once you're a year into it or 2 years into it, you're suddenly going to be like, thank God I started building that email list early.
Yeah, I think it's an A tier because of your description. I think that I would say it's S tier if you need to be doing it now and you're going to be seeing results from it now, and that you'll see those results compound. But with newsletters, they'll compound a bit, but you're going to, and you should be doing it now, but it's not the thing that I would say if you're going to start this thing and you have to pick 5 things that you can do and you have to pick the other ones you just have to totally leave by the wayside. I think newsletter I would definitely recommend doing, but I think it's not quite S tier.
Yeah, your argument about the fact that if you had to pick a few things to start your podcast, I definitely would not pick building a newsletter. So I definitely agree with you.
I think
that
because we're going to be too kind early on, and then all of a sudden we're going to get towards the end of this, and we're going to start needing to keep things away from S tier. Otherwise, we're going to have like 6 things in S tier, and that's not going to make any sense.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. All right, next up is doubling down on winning formats. How do you feel about this one?
I would say
it's definitely
this is
a good
tough.
one.
Yeah, doubling down is hugely important. I'd say A, verging on S. You need to be finding out what your audience actually wants and then executing on it. And so this is one of those that I think is sneaky good advice because I think people sometimes get too used to there being so much noise that they can't find the signal, and I think sometimes they view that amount of random information going on as an excuse to not narrow down or niche down or find that transformation, find that piece of content that really resonates and keep hitting on that. And so if you can instead just go, hey, this thing got some good play, I'm just going to keep practicing that and doing that and executing on that, I think you'll find a lot more success than if you just kind of continue to go, well, I'm having a hard time understanding what my audience is wanting. Well, niche down, buckle down, try out something, and then you can really see whether or not your audience likes it.
Yeah, repeating on your successes is definitely also smart just because, like, we don't need to be reinventing the wheel every single episode. That's honestly how you burn out. And so having these repeatable formats that you go, this one worked and I can do this again in just a slightly different way makes it a much smaller cognitive load to run your podcast, and also honestly keeps your audience happy because you're giving them more of what they've asked for. So I think that one is definitely A tier. I think is a good spot for that one. All right. Writing strong episode titles. Where does this one go? I think it's probably S tier.
No way, dude. No,
you don't think episode titles are S tier?
Well, where are we posting them?
On YouTube and RSS feeds.
Okay. Well, for RSS feeds, I'd say they're like C tier. For
RSS
YouTube,
feeds, they're C tier.
For YouTube, certainly they're A tier, and thumbnails are S tier.
Dude, I've clicked on new podcast episodes because of their titles on like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. They've gotten me before. I think since we're working in, okay, so you said S or A tier for YouTube, or did you say A tier?
No, I said A tier for YouTube.
Okay,
thumbnails are S tier.
We're gonna have a strong A tier. We're gonna have a lot of A tier advice here.
I'm telling you, I would put it lower, but you know what? That's fine.
Yeah, I think because of YouTube, they have to, like, I would compromise on B for just RSS feeds, but I think because we're putting YouTube in there too, it's got to be A.
Okay.
I don't think there's too much more to say about that. Definitely, getting that curiosity gap in there, getting people interested is highly important because if people don't click, they don't watch. So, got to have strong titles in there.
Yeah.
All right. The next piece of advice is don't monetize too early. Where does don't monetize too early come in here? I think this is pretty bad advice.
Yeah, I don't really get.
But I have a caveat for it.
Okay. Well, I'll hear your caveat, but I'm currently thinking D.
Yeah, I think I'm okay with D. I was thinking C, but yeah, D works for me.
Yeah, I would say well, wait, you didn't say what your caveat is.
My caveat's just don't monetize badly too early. Don't monetize in ways that push your audience away, like putting adds in at crucial moments of your show that are going to drop your listenership off at that moment, or like putting too many like brand names all over the front of your podcast cover that makes people think that it's just some like corporate shill sort of show. Like, you want to keep things personal and not let the monetization that you do get in front of that, because you don't want your audience feeling like you're always selling to them.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that that's the big differentiator. Are you selling badly, or are you selling well and actually giving people something that's beneficial towards them? And if you're doing the latter, then I think you're all good to go. Monetize when you want to monetize. If you're doing the former, then, stop doing that.
Yeah, definitely stop doing that. All right, the next one is add a CTA to your show notes. Kind of related to the last one.
This is specifically show notes?
Just show notes. Add a CTA to your show notes.
If I'm thinking about the things that I need to do right now to find success, I'll put it as a B or a C. I'll probably put it as a B, but you need to put it at the very top.
I think it's good, but yes, if you have to be choosing what you're focusing on, I definitely agree it's a B.
Yeah, I might kick it down late as we go through this, but right now it's a B.
We can go back to ones. There's no rules here, Casey.
Okay.
Okay, next one up is track follower drop-off points, and that means like where they're dropping off in your podcast episode.
Yeah, so that's super important.
Yeah,
I would say,
especially in the beginning.
Yeah, but sometimes it can be hard to fully have all of the data early on.
It's definitely especially because you usually have lower viewership. You don't really know why they're dropping off. You just know that they are.
Yeah, but it informs you a lot in what you should be trying. I say go with S tier here. I think this is one of the few signals that you can actually get that's super beneficial to you early on. And so it's that and click-through rate and the percentage viewed. And so those are the three things that can really help you identify and test new things out.
Yeah, and you can really tell if people are dropping off in the first 30 seconds, you got to amp up your intros. You got to make that value proposition more clear. If they're dropping off partway through the value section of your podcast, then you know that value section either isn't delivering on the promise or it's going on too long. So there's a lot of actionable things to do once you actually know what's going on with this metric.
Yeah, for sure.
Next up is study competing shows. Where does this one go? I think this actually might be C tier advice, but I have a caveat again.
Well, okay, we'll just say what your caveat is.
My caveat is don't study competing shows that are way bigger than you. If you're studying competing shows that are slightly bigger than you, that's actually pretty damn good advice. But if you're studying shows that are massive compared to your itty bitty show, terrible advice.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think it just depends on what you're looking to get out of them. But honestly, you could probably get... I think that this used to be a lot more beneficial advice when there were fewer shows and when podcasting strategy was more in its infancy. At this point, there are a lot of things that are you should do this and you should avoid this that are just way more transparent and clear. And there's more stepping stones to get you from point A of starting a podcast to point Z of having a successful podcast, that I would say this has become less and less important. And so I'd agree. I'd be fine with putting it at C.
All right, it's hitting a C. That's our first C. Okay, we've now filled up every single tier here. We've got something on each one. All right.
Thank God.
Next up, post social media cutdowns. I definitely think this is good advice.
Yeah, but so what I've been seeing is that I think it is good advice, but I do think that these platforms are moving more and more into islands away from each other. And so do I think it's S tier advice? I don't know, because it's something that you have to do. And it's something that I think you should put time into. It's one of the top 5 things. If right now and we might have thumbnails coming up later, so this is a little bit of a spoiler, but like if I'm talking about the top 5 things, it's making sure that your recordings are high quality as far as audio goes, make sure that they're serviceable as far as video goes, making sure that you have good titles and thumbnails, and then making sure that you have a social media strategy. And so it's right at that edge there. I'd probably put it at A, and maybe start to look at dropping something down to B.
Well, you can start looking at the other ones to drop down, but I agree with you that one is definitely A tier. It kind of hurts me not to put it at S tier because I do feel like, a lot of shows have gotten their starts and like blown up because of podcast clips.
Mm-hmm.
So like it is kind of a crucial element of it. However, and like you don't want to be doing your podcast without it, but like I think A tier is good enough for it.
Yeah.
Like I don't think you don't make the show because you're making podcast clips. Like you don't make the show to make podcast clips. You make podcast clips to support the show. So yeah. I'm cool with it being at A tier.
Cool. I'd agree.
All right. Respect viewer time, cut fluff. Where does that one go?
That's like a solid B.
Is it a B or is it a C? I kind of feel like it's a C.
Yeah, I would almost agree, except for the percentage viewed is such an important metric. Ooh. And so the second that you start having too much fluff in something, your watch time is going to go down dramatically, and then the algorithms are going to show your stuff to less people.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that the like sentiment behind this piece of advice is actually correct. You don't want to have things in your podcast that are superfluous. But like, I think that people take that way too seriously and they start cutting out like all the little moments that make them seem human. And that's not what you want to do. You want to relate to your audience. You want to have those funny moments. You want to like make sure that people are connecting with you as an individual, and taking out all those moments just cuts out that form of interaction and like cuts back on that parasocial relationship that you're building. So
yeah, a podcast that I was recently talking with, one of the things I was talking with them about was adjusting their branding to more center around the host rather than what it is right now, which is sort of the industry that they're in. And the reason being is because, number one, the host has a good track record, and they also, you want to make sure the host is the person who is there throughout every single episode. They are the centerpiece of your podcast. And so you want to make sure that you have room for people to understand who that person is and why they should care about getting, information through this host lens or point of view. And the only way that you can do that is by embracing the little bits of fluff that help out. Now, what I would avoid is having that turn into that you're more focused on, the fluff or the person who's hosting rather than the value that you're offering. It has to be this middle ground in this dance.
Yeah. So it's definitely it's not bad advice. It's just easily misinterpreted advice.
Yeah.
So the next one up is going to be decide episode length intentionally.
Yeah, that's like kind of D tier.
Yeah, I think so too. Like
you should, yeah.
Like I feel like what it's saying is to like decide how long your episode is going to be before you start recording it or anything else. Like my episodes are always going to be 20 minutes long. And I think let your podcast be the length it's supposed to be. And like if you want to make sure that your podcasts are always on the shorter side, that's okay. Or the longer side, that's okay. But like, well, I don't really think that you should always make them long if you don't have to. If you have a topic you're talking about that doesn't need a full hour, don't take a full hour of your audience's time. That goes back to respecting audience time.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that you need to make sure that people, because the thing that people will think about a lot is, okay, podcasts are listened to when people are driving in the car or in a commute of some type, and that's true. But if somebody likes your podcast, they'll they'll listen to it, even if it's shorter, even if they have to then, at a stoplight quickly change to a different podcast. If you're interesting enough, I mean, think about how many people listen to YouTube videos while they're driving. And so I just think that the amount of time is so much less important than how exciting all of the moments are in that podcast. And so without a doubt, that's what you should be focusing on way more than is every episode the same amount of time, or am I making this long enough for people to value it?
All right. So next up is sound natural and conversational.
Well, there's some pretty popular podcasts where the person sounds deeply unnatural.
I know. I knew you were going to say that.
there's this one person on Star Talk Radio that, I'm sure he's the nicest dude in the world, but man, the way he reads questions and stuff, it feels like an old sports radio announcer, and it just feels deeply inauthentic. But I think for the audience, it seems to work. And so...
Honestly, also like a lot of true crime presenters and a lot of like those like news reporters who do podcasts, like they don't sound natural or conversational.
Yeah.
They sound like they're presenting.
Yeah. And, another example is this is the second time I've brought them up in an episode recently, but I just gave up on listening to the Ringer's NFL show. And the reason I did it was because I think that podcast became too conversational. It started being more about the hosts and like their weird quirks versus, football and sports. And so I was just no longer getting the information that I actually came to them for, and was instead getting, some of the fluff and the conversational elements that just I didn't need. They weren't bringing me joy anymore.
So you cut it out of your life?
Yeah, I unsubscribed.
Sometimes you gotta make that choice.
I've been a subscriber for probably like 4 years.
Dude, I mean, that's a hard thing to cut off.
Yeah.
But hey, we have a lot of stuff vying for our attention, so you got to make your choices. Next up, we've got listen actively and respond to what guests say. Just like I just did with you a moment ago.
Good job.
Yeah. I think this is actually good advice.
Yeah, it's good advice.
I struggle with it. I don't think it might be S tier, but I'm leaning more towards A or B.
Yeah, we're probably downgrading it because we think it's obvious advice.
Yeah.
And so, but it's really good advice. I'd put A.
Okay, A tier.
Yeah, I think you just... It can be really challenging for people to focus on so many different things while podcasting. Recently, I launched a different podcast where I'm interviewing people about innovation. And on that podcast, I have different segments to the podcast. And every segment starts with me asking a question that I have written down. And then we go into a conversational back and forth. And so during that interview, I have to make sure that, number one, our recording time is only an hour. And that means the person coming in, making sure that we solve any technical issues, we record, and then we close out. And so then that normally means that I have about 45 minutes of actually the interview. And so in that time, I have to fit 4 different segments. And in each of those, I have to, because I have a teleprompter, and so I have to make sure that I have my teleprompter up and working, that I can switch from my teleprompter back to the person so I can look and see them, that I'm tracking where, what segment I'm on, what segment's coming up, making sure that if I have any follow-up questions, I need to be ready for those. And so there's a lot of listening that is having to take place while doing other things. And I notice for myself, like it can be so difficult to make sure, okay, did I hear what he just said or she just said appropriately? And do I actually have a response for it to further the conversation? And so practicing that listening is hugely important.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I'm excited to see that new podcast.
No, you can't. I'm sorry.
Darn. All right, next up, related to interviews. Avoid making every story about yourself.
Repeat this back. What is the purpose
Avoid
of this?
making every story about yourself. And I think this is relating to guests interviews.
This is D tier. I don't even.
I agree that it's D tier. I think it's terrible advice.
Yeah, because number one, people, I think, do not make things about themselves enough on podcasts when you're first starting out. Because this comes back to that you are the host. People need to see through your lens or your point of view, which means that they actually have to experience what your point of view is. And so this is another thing that I'll stop bringing up this other podcast at some point, I promise. But in those segment questions, I write in my opinion on these things because I know that I need to tell the audience, I need to level set at where I'm coming from and why I'm asking this question. And so it's something that, we've had to pound into different guests or hosts that we've worked with is like, you need to tell the audience what you think. And I know that can feel unstable. It can make you feel like, well, am I being egotistical? Is there hubris involved? Because I'm asking this person because they're the expert. So why should I, deign to have my own opinions? But those opinions will lead towards interesting conversations, and they'll lead towards you actually providing to your audience something for them to latch onto to either agree or disagree with you, which is what's going to keep them listening.
Yeah, which goes perfectly into our next one, which is to develop your own voice and perspective. So I think that's S tier, right?
Yeah, it's S tier. You have to have an opinion.
Yeah, because it's so easy to just have your podcast just be milquetoast because you're just exploring something with no perspective whatsoever, and that's just not that interesting. People want to know what you think.
And it doesn't give your guest anything to work with. Mm-hmm. If you simply say yes and then go on to a next question, it does not allow your guest to be able to have that back and forth, to be able to elaborate or further explore something that they just said. And so instead, you're going to have a rhythm that's very duh, 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 rather than, flowing, orchestral, any of those types of things. Like, you want to make sure that your conversations are conversations rather than just question, 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 question.
I couldn't agree more. And also, the best conversations have some conflict in them. That doesn't mean you have to fight with your guest. Doesn't mean you have to disagree with them on every point. But having some back and forth and having some disagreement and some amount of having to debate makes a conversation so much more interesting than if it's just flat and just flowing the same direction the entire time. Next up, we've got pick a clear listener avatar.
Overrated.
I think it's overrated too. I don't think it's definitely not D tier though.
Yeah. No, probably B.
Yeah, I think it's B tier. People get too hung up on it. But it's not also, it's bad.
Also, I think most people kind of know. And yeah, you can go and test it and you can make sure. I think what's not overrated is testing your audience and continuing to refine it. But just coming up with it and having a basis, normally you can kind of tell based on, who you are and what types of questions you're asking and what type of subject you're in, who your target audience is. And past that, if you then box yourself in too much, you're never going to explore new audiences that you could pull in, or you're going to end up just kind of having it feel like you're really, really restricted.
Mm-hmm. A lot of the times we end up finding out that our target audience is ourselves. Yeah. In all honesty.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're making a podcast. You have questions that it's a pretty natural thing that you will, unlike other, places or brands, it's really valuable to know who your target audience is because you were trying to sell them something that otherwise they wouldn't know about or might not need. In podcasting, it's so much about who you are as a person that you're looking for people who think that you're interesting and want to know the same types of things that you want to know.
Next up, actually related to what we just talked about. Have a clear value proposition. I mean, we talked about it earlier with the niches and transformations. I think this is really important.
Yeah, I think it's probably S tier.
I think it's S tier too, because people don't just listen because they listen because they're going to get something out of it, and sometimes that value proposition is entertainment. You know, you're going to make someone laugh. You're going to make them feel better. Sometimes it's information. You're gonna inform them about the news, tell them your perspective, get them to see things a little bit differently. Sometimes it's just that you have an interest. Like, I love the podcast, How Stuff Works. Like, they just explain how different elements of life work, so that, because people are just curious, like, how does my dishwasher work? How does it work once I pay my taxes? Like, they just delve into these things because people are curious. And so we're solving that curiosity, and that's the value proposition. But also, no one just listens because, though. Avoid reading scripts word for word.
Well,
this podcast has been fully scripted every moment.
I would say it really depends on what your goal is here. So I'd probably, I think where you have it at C tier is probably right.
Yeah.
I would definitely encourage people not to have every single thing scripted out, because it will help you make, and we kept coming back to conversational, and the reason is because you do want to, especially in interview podcasts, allow for it to go to unexpected places. That's where like the magic of an interview is. And so if you have it fully scripted out, you're going to box yourself into not being able to have those opportunities and those moments of revelation. But on the counter is, if you don't prep enough and you instead leave it up to just, stumbling across things, I think that can be really dangerous too. I think it's really valuable to have elements that are, if not scripted out, close to it. I'll give an example is for Diary of a CEO. The way he asked his opening question, and this is where I got my idea of the segments from, was stealing it from him, is the way he asks his intro questions is always so good. I would recommend anybody go watch, 10 of his episodes and just watch his first question, because the way he does it is so much more interesting than 90% of podcasts. Because 90% of podcasts, they'll start out by saying, tell us about who you are, how you got started, and, why we should care about listening to you. And that's just asking somebody for their resume. And most people, they're listening to the podcast, they assume that this person knows stuff, that they have some reason that they're there. And so most people are not caring about getting that resume right at the start. Instead, they want to hear something interesting. They want to hear something that changes the way that they think. And so for him, a lot of the times, like, he'll ask, you are this type of person. What was the catalyst for you becoming like that? And it's a very similar thing. It's asking similarly about resume a little bit, but more about what's personal to that person. And so the only way that he can accomplish that is by having those questions scripted out. And so that's where I would say it is okay to script out some questions. Just make sure that they're the good ones that are going to actually lead towards something.
The next piece of advice is to define success metrics before launching.
No.
I agree. D tier.
Yeah. Because you don't know what you have. And
you have no idea.
I would say that the difference is, if you're a business and you need to get something out of podcasting, it's okay to have goals. If you are an individual and you are doing this for the love of the game, you need to have an expectation that you have no idea what success metric you should be hitting. Instead, you want to be focusing on getting out there. And I mean in interesting ways. So you need to be thinking about strategy over results at that stage. For businesses, you need to be thinking about goals and the strategies that will get you to those goals. And honestly, you can have goals no matter who you are. But I would just say that, like, if you're just an individual creating it, I would encourage you to care less about goals than, different strategies and just learning what your audience is looking for.
All right, the next one actually relates pretty strongly back to what we were talking about right before this one, but pre-interview guests when possible. How do you feel about that one?
I think it depends on the person. So I'd probably put it C tier because I just think it really depends.
I bump it up to B tier. Like, I think I think the when possible, like, it's not like it's saying you have to always do it, but like, I definitely think it's beneficial when possible.
Okay, that's this question being, or that's this advice being a wet blanket. I don't think we can.
That's a good point. It should choose a side.
Yeah, have a perspective.
Then it goes to D tier. No, I'm kidding.
No, if we get rid of that whenever possible, like, get rid of that fucking thing, and because you either do it or you don't do it, right? Like,
yeah, and like, if you can't do it and you really want to still interview someone, fine. But like, you should try to pre-interview people.
Well, are you saying that you should, or are you just saying that that's what this is saying?
I think that it definitely depends on the person. I don't think that a pre-interview is ever bad. I think it just gives you ammunition as the host, because I don't think pre-interviews are about preparing your guest. Pre-interviews are about preparing you. So if you look at it as getting yourself ready, like, you already know some of the interesting alleys you can go down, and you're gonna like expertly and you're gonna expertly lead this interview down specific alleyways and keep it interesting and get their stories out of them. Pre-interviews can be really good for that. But if you're just gonna like chit chat with them and like say hi to them, then like, it's probably not useful.
Yeah, I would just say that it really depends on who you are as the host and what you're hoping to get out of it. Because I think there is something valuable about having the guest be a little bit on tilt when I'm interviewing them, because I want to ask questions that surprise them and challenge where they're coming from. And so a little bit too much over prep for me might be an issue. Like, I'm booking a guest right now, and he was like, are we going to do like a pre-interview? And I was like, no, I'm going to send you questions that I want to ask you. You can say, whether you think those are the right ones, and then we're going to go from there. Because I would so much rather them know, okay, these are, the general topics that are going to be asked. But after that, it's all about what I want to challenge them on, what I want to hear about, because that's where I think, my ability is to try to drive the conversation.
Yeah. All right. I think this might be C tier just because it doesn't apply to everybody. It's not that pre-interviews are bad. It's just that you really don't need it. Like, if you're choosing what to focus on, that's not it. But if you really think that those are going to help you, go for it.
Yeah. And if they're going to help you, I totally agree. Do it.
Yeah. Okay. So next up is hook the follower in the first 30 to 40 seconds. Hook the follower in the first 30 to 40 seconds.
This is a weird one because, like, yeah, I agree. You need to do that. I think if you need to be focusing on that, it's probably pretty important. S tier is probably right.
I think S tier is right. That viewer retention is just so important to the algorithm. And if you're not hooking people that fast, like, I had a podcast the other day that they interested me with the title. I clicked on it, and the first minute of the pod, I gave it like 2 or 3 minutes, and it was so boring, and I quit because they did not hook me. And they had a chance for a brand new viewer because they nailed it with their podcast title, but they lost me because it was just really slow and it was not clear why I was listening. Next up is use a dedicated microphone, not your laptop.
Yeah, that's S tier.
How can it not be? Not really good. Audio quality matters. Your laptop mic sucks. I don't know what else there's to say about it. You're editing people's laptop mics right now because they're using them as when they're guests on the innovation show. It's annoying, right?
Yeah, and like we have another video where you can go check out what microphone we recommend and everything, but microphone is easily the most important thing. And what I would say is that a host cannot get away with having a bad microphone. A guest can. And it's because the host is the permanent fixture, and it's what we've all grown accustomed to. Even if, even for a generation that didn't grow up with watching cable news or something, or programs like that, it was so common on those platforms, though, that you would be watching and the anchor would sound great, would sound impeccable, and then they'd bring somebody on who was calling in from their phone or something, and you would hear that phone tinniness. And that is just like a normal thing that became normalized. And so people are used to that. And it's the same with podcasts now, because they're descended from that type of media. And so it is okay for people when they hear a bad guest, because they understand the host doesn't have control over it, as long as the host looks and sounds good. But the second that the host looks and especially sounds bad, it downgrades the entire podcast. It makes it so that people don't trust whether or not they can believe in the person who's the host, and they're not sure whether or not they want to keep listening because it's a bad audio experience.
Choose a topic based on listener pain points. I think it's pretty good advice.
On listener, yeah, I think it's good advice. It's not S tier. Get out of here.
It's not S tier?
Why? Yeah, no.
I mean, that's pretty important to the algorithm. I'm willing to put it on A tier. Like I'm not like, it's not like I'm like, this has to be S tier, but I do think it's pretty smart.
Okay, explain yourself.
Basically, people are searching for solutions. And just like we talked about earlier with niching down, and value propositions, giving people solutions is a surefire way to be algorithm friendly, pop up in search results, and be seen as an authority. Because if you could fix things for people in their lives, that's just going to elevate your positioning in their head to expert level advice every single time.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree that that's true. And probably for 98% of people who are watching this podcast, I think that that's pretty true. Because if you're a business, especially, and you're looking to start a podcast, you need to be solving the solutions of, either the people in your industry, or if you're trying to outreach to your clients or to, to your customers, then yeah, you need to be doing this because it's algorithm friendly, and it also helps people understand why they should be listening. I'm not sold that it's S tier, because I just think if we're looking at, we've already got we've got 6 things up there that are S tier. So what are you willing?
Casey's like, S tier is limited.
Dude, it is. We can't tell people go and do 9 different things. What thing are you willing to strike down from S tier?
I'm not arguing that it needs to go up. I just want to make sure we've really considered it.
Okay, great. Well, we considered it. I think that we need to move something down from S tier. I think there's too many things up there right now.
At the end of this, once we're done with these next 2, we will go through and make sure that we agree with all these.
Okay.
All right. So the next one is to be clear about your show's target audience. Very similar to what we had earlier. I think, where did we put the one that we had earlier? Oh, we pick a clear listener avatar in B. I think this is also B, maybe.
Yeah. I think we already kind of explained
that
this one.
So there's not too much to delve into. And then the last one is to focus each episode on one core idea or question.
C tier.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with each of your episodes are focused on one core idea or question, but it's not something that you have to do. And you want to be focused. You want to make sure that it's focused. Really, you want to have it focused on the value proposition.
Yeah.
Are you solving this value proposition still? Are there still open questions about the value? And as long as there are open questions about the value, you can keep going and you can like broaden the focus. But if you've run out of questions, your episode should be over.
Yeah, and another thing that's growing is segmenting your show. And so with that style where you might talk about 3 different topics and they're all centered around whatever your niche or transformation is, then for sure this isn't going to be applicable for you. And so for that, I'm out.
Yeah. All right. So which of these S tiers do you want to move down, Casey?
Well, Michael, it's impossible for me to read them. So
it's hard for me to read them when they're on a 4K monitor directly in front of me.
What are they?
All right. I'm going to move my microphone over here. It's a little awkward. All right. Be clear about your show's niche. Track listener drop-off points. Even this close, it's hard to read. Develop your own voice and perspective. Have a clear value proposition. Hook the listener in the first 30 to 60 seconds. And use a dedicated microphone, not a laptop mic. Dude,
Okay,
I think these are all S tier.
No, I think this is pretty easy. I think there's one that is the step right after all of these. And that's checking when they're dropping off.
Oh, okay.
I think you need to perfect your first 30 seconds and you need to nail your thumbnail, title, make sure that your audio quality is good, make sure that all of those things are good, that you're getting people through that first 30 seconds and on to that next beat. And then you can start identifying how to fix those next beats to keep people longer.
I actually fully agree with you. I think that's a really good point. Because I like that the S tier is like, these are the things that you have to be focusing on at the very start of your podcast.
Yep.
This other stuff is not important until these things are all the ducks are in a row on these 5 things.
Yep.
But honestly, this is a pretty evenly spread out tier list.
Yeah, it didn't start out that way.
It didn't start out that way. We had a lot of S tier advice right away at the beginning.
Yeah.
Casey, thanks for helping me figure out all this advice and whether it's good or not.
Thank you. Hey, man, this was super fun.
Yeah. And if you have any questions, leave a comment below.
Yeah, do it.
Thank you for contacting podcast support.